What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Torrence, and in today's video I wanted to talk to you about a few things in my collection that are older releases that I meant to use in 2020 but never got the chance to. But before we get started, I would love if you hit that subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed to the channel, I would like to say thank you. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my future uploads. But if you watched one of my previous videos where I talked about the difference between when I borrow makeups between a makeup lover and a makeup artist, I'll make sure I leave that video linked right here above. I talked about the different products that can do the exact same thing, but if I were to ask the average makeup lover for something in their collection, the product they would show me versus the product a makeup artist would show me from their collection. And when I was cleaning up for that video, I started to notice eyeshadow palettes in my collection that I truly wanted to do a video on last year, but if for one reason or another, whether it be during one of those times when I had an acne breakout and I just didn't feel like doing a video, or whether it be during the Christmas break when I needed downtime after the orthodontist. But I just have many reasons on why I did not use these palettes, but every single one of them were palettes that I was truly excited to get when I purchased them, but I just never quite got the time. And I'm making a promise to myself right here on camera in front of the world to let you all know before the end of 2021, I want to make sure I use these palettes. I'm really hoping to do a tutorial and make sure I put that out to the world as proof that I did use them, but I won't be mad at myself if I just happen to use them behind the scenes and don't get a chance to show the world. But at the end of the year, I'm gonna make sure I'm open and honest and show you if I've used all 12 of these palettes here. So if you would like to know exactly which of those 12 palettes that I'm talking about, just go ahead and continue to watch. And although these palettes are not in the order in which I was most excited to get them, I did decide just for fun to go ahead and put them in order from most affordable up to the most expensive. And so we're going to start things off with something that's not only the most affordable palette on this list, but also the smallest palette. And that palette at number one would be the Natasha Denona Mini Gold palette. As someone who absolutely loves the original Natasha Denona Gold palette, it was a 15 pan palette, and unfortunately it was $129, but I absolutely love it. When I found out they came out with a miniature version to it that not only cost $25, but had 5 shades that were not in the original palette, I had to have it. For me, it gave me the chance to try the Natasha Denona formula and another green palette without breaking the bank. And these colors to me are absolutely beautiful. I truly had every intention on using it when I first picked it up, but it just seemed like every time I reached for it, something else happened. Another release came out, especially with Juvia's Place, and I always decided to just go ahead and use those palettes instead. But this here is a palette that every time I see it, the first thing I think is Torrence. That palette is beautiful. Why haven't you used it? You should go ahead and use it today. But I never quite seem to grab it, and this is one of those palettes that by the end of the year I promised myself I have to use because the color story is absolutely beautiful and it's right up my alley. The only thing that this doesn't have is a matte black, but considering greens are my absolute favorite, who needs my second favorite to complete the look? Number 2 on this list is a palette that unfortunately has been sold out and discontinued. It was a collab with Pure Cosmetics, and that would be the Pure and Raw Beauty Christy collab. This is the very first collab that I believe Raw Beauty Christy has done, but I never got a chance to getting around to using it because by the time I grabbed it, it had sold out, and I didn't want to do a tutorial on a palette that I knew was very much going to be requested but not accessible, and so I decided to hold out on it. And by the time I wanted to go ahead and use it, the ColourPop collab had came out, and to me the color story on that one was just a little prettier, and so I decided to do a tutorial on that one, which I can leave linked right here above. And so I never quite got the chance to using this one, but every time I've seen it, I've always wanted to know exactly what the formula was like. I only have one other palette by Pure Cosmetics, and that, funny enough, is also a collab with Etienne Ortega. And so anytime I see this, I just always think if the formula is beautiful, this is going to make a perfect everyday palette because one side here is full of neutrals, and you can see those colors can be worn on any day of the week. These are even work appropriate colors, and trust me, don't let anyone tell you that neutrals cannot create a glam look because you can create a dramatic look using just neutrals. And this here seems to be a color story that most people would be comfortable with, and especially considering the fact that there are 8 mattes and 1 shimmer, that color ratio will fit most people, especially those who aren't into metallic shades. But here on the other side is where you get my attention. These colorful shades, and considering the fact that we have a green and a purple matte, just like the other side, there are 8 mattes and 1 metallic here. So the formula ratio is absolutely beautiful to me. More than likely, this is the side I would use if the color story is beautiful. And normally, greens and purples are what get me, even though a matte yellow is always something that's beautiful. What actually caught my attention the first time I looked at this side was the matte red and the matte white. It is very hard to pull off those colors, so if for any reason these are beautiful, this may become a new favorite travel palette. Even though we're probably not traveling nowhere, I just go to work and act like I'm traveling somewhere far and distant, because you all know that trip to work be like, ugh. And I almost forgot to mention, I believe its original retail price when I purchased it was $34. Next up, unfortunately, is another sold out and discontinued palette, but that just goes to show you just how long I've had it and still haven't used it. And that would be the Huda Beauty Viper palette. First off, the fact that this packaging looks like a nice teal shade is exactly what got it for me. I am someone, although my favorite eyeshadow colors are green, teal shades are my mother's favorites. So anytime I see a teal color, it automatically makes me think of her. So that was the first thing that brought me in. But then you get to the inside and you realize there are 3 matte shades and 3 metallic shades. You have 2 matte brown shades on the outside on the top row, and then you have this matte green on the bottom and the center. So one, the fact that I have enough mattes to do a full eye look, a transition, and a crease shade already had me. But to know that the pop of color matte that you gave me was green was like, you know what? I'm already feeling you, honey. If it couldn't be a matte black, the fact that it's a matte green, you already got me. But then to also know, one, you gave me a metallic that's light enough for in a corner highlight. You gave me a shade here, although he looks like he's blue, to me it looks like a duochrome. And out of all shimmer formulas, duochrome is my absolute favorite. So to have this shade here was absolutely beautiful. He might not be full green, but considering I got a matte green to go with it, we'll work with it. But then they switched things up and blew my mind when they put this shade here. To me, that was the shade that made me go, oh wait. How do I use, like, wait, what do I do with, And the fact that this palette makes my brain question exactly how can I pull this off is exactly the reason I bought it. Because to me, I love testing my creativity. But because I've never figured out, Torrence, exactly where are you going where you want to risk testing your creativity one day before you head out the door, is the same reason why I ain't used it yet. So I have it, and out of all of my Sigma palettes, I believe this is one of the few where even when I pick it up and say I'm going to use it, I never do. If I tell myself I'm going to use one of the other Sigma palettes, I seem to do so. So this is one of the palettes that I'm really going to make sure that I go ahead and use. And I'm checking now because this is number 3 on the list. And before it did sell out and was discontinued, this palette retailed at $36. I know for many people, a 6-pan palette is a lot for $36, but these are really huge pans, and I'm someone who truly believes you can get a full eye look, maybe even multiple looks, if the color story is just right. And considering we have neutrals, you can get at least 3 different looks if you just use these 2 in the crease and transition and just pop one of these on the lids. But the fact that we also have that green means we'll already be able to mix things up and double that color story up to 6 different looks. But I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to get for my first try, but I'm going to make sure I test this out before the end of the year as well. At number 4 on the list, which also retails for $36, but is currently available even though it does sell out quickly, so if for any reason you want it, we have the Midas Cosmetics Smoky Glow palette. I remember when I first got this palette, I was so excited to get it, but then I had a friend who I can honestly admit is a bigger supporter than I am. So when she told me that her order was lost and she could not get it, I felt really bad for her, and I made sure I gave her my palette. I told her if for any reason it comes back in stock, I'll just reorder it and I'll give her mine. Once I put in a new order, I shipped it off to her, but it wasn't until I gave it to her that I realized the one I gave her had the misspelled word on it, and the one I was going to get was going to have the word corrected. And I'm like, Says, I wanted the original one to show that I got the first collab part. I don't want the remake. It's gonna make... But I didn't have the heart to take it back or ask for it back. And when I tell you this color story to me, I say she's beautiful and she makes me wonder exactly what I'm gonna do. Because to me, I look at this palette and I go, Torrence, do you wanna go more pink or do you wanna go more purple? And the problem is, I can never decide, which is exactly why I've never used this palette. The thing that I really like about this palette is, one, even if you were going for an all matte palette, there are enough colors to do that. But the variety and the different tones of the shimmers is what's beautiful. I can't stand when you get a palette, when you get 5 different neutral shades and you can wear 3 of them on the eye at the exact same time and nobody can tell because they're all muddy together. With these, you can actually truly see a different undertone in all of the neutrals, all of the pinks. And this is the palette that looks like you can wear it any day or you can wear it for a night out on the town. And because I just don't know what shade I want to wear first, I'm not quite sure which one I'll do. And my favorite part is the fact that this shade here, Jump Cut, is not a straight orange shade, because you all know I am not a fan of oranges. It's more of like a peachy shade. So I'm not sure if that's going to be part of the colors that I use on the first look, but I cannot wait to tear into this palette. I just keep pulling it out and keep forgetting to use it, but I promise you, by the end of 2021, we're going to be using the Smoky Glow palette. At number 5, with a retail value of $49, we have a palette that I picked up simply because it was a gift that I bought for my sister. I am someone who generally prefers Urban Decay shadows. She is someone who generally prefers the packaging and color story of Too Faced palettes. So it's not too crazy to believe on occasions like birthdays and Christmas, we'll purchase each other a gift from those particular brands. And one year I got her this palette and she loved and raved about it so much that I finally just had to go ahead and get one of my own, just so I didn't never have to worry about borrowing hers. Because the way she raved about it, I truly worried about if she was going to let me get it. But that particular palette would be the Too Faced Chocolate Gold palette. Now first off, let's get into the fact of how pretty this packaging is. And you just have to excuse the fingerprints on mine because I am wearing lotion on my hands right now, because I did not want to come on here with crusty fingers, honey. But let's just get into this here. And the reason why I grabbed her this palette is simply because I felt as if it was quick and to the point and offered a variety. When you look inside, you see this palette has a bunch of neutral shades, but it equally has a bunch of pop of colors. And because there are very few mattes, I believe there are 4 mattes. You have like a beige, a medium brown, a light brown, and a black. So you already know exactly what colors you're going to be popping in the crease, and then you just top it off with a different lid shade and you're out the door. So I knew my sister, she's the type who loves to just take her fingers, swipe a color across and keep it moving. So this gave her the option to have a bunch of different lid topper shades while also having a palette that she thought was beautiful, and the fact that it smells like chocolate, she was going to be on it. Many people don't like scented products, but my sister loves them. The Sweet Peach palette, the Chocolate palette, the Semi-Sweet palette, it does not matter. She loves them all. And to me, she just talked about the formula so much, and just looking at the shades, they look absolutely beautiful. All of the reviews I've seen and heard about it have been nice, but I'm someone who just has mine and has never even used it, never even swatched it. So unfortunately, I have not used it all 2020, but I promised myself I will be using it for 2021. For number 6, also retailing at $49, is a palette that I just knew I was going to use every single day when I got it. The problem is, ColourPop came out with a Going Coconuts palette, and that just became such a favorite that anytime I wanted a quick neutral look, it was like, okay, if I wanted neutral to cool, I'll grab that. If I wanted it warm tone neutral, chances are I was going for my Juvia's Place Warrior palette, which I'll leave a link for my tutorial for that right here. But I never quite got around to this palette here simply because I had those, and that one would be the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. Now let me tell you, out of all of them, the packaging on this one is my absolute favorite. Just looking at this, I think once upon a time I used to love the packaging on the Naked Smoky and the Naked 3, but I've since decluttered and given all of those away. This is the only Naked palette that I still have, and it's the one I keep because the color story is absolutely beautiful. This is something I think you could wear any and every day of the year, but because it has vivid golds in there, it is something that you can wear and create a dramatic look. But to me, this palette just really says, Torrence, anytime, any place, I'll make you look great. But I never quite got around to using it because, like I said, ColourPop and Juvia's Place already had me covered for these colors, and so it just sits on the shelf and I never quite got around to it. But just looking at it now makes me want to go ahead and put some primer on and go ahead and create a soft, beautiful look. But I never quite got around to doing it, and I promised myself for 2021, out of all of my Urban Decay palettes, this is the one palette I really want to make sure I go ahead and try out. I just have to figure out if I'm going to make sure I do a tutorial on this or not. So if you would like to see a tutorial on this palette, just make sure you leave a comment down below. At number 7, which is also retailing for $49, it is amazing to me to think that I never used this palette. And the number one reason being is because I gave this palette away in a giveaway. If you all remember, one of the most excited palettes that I was excited for was this palette, simply because when I purchased it, I managed to get it during a buy one get one free sale. And I figured if there was anyone else in the world that I wanted to share something with, especially something like a free product, I wanted to share it with someone who I knew was a makeup lover and someone who would be grateful to receive it, as well as someone I was grateful to have in my life. So it still shocks me every time I look at it and notice I have not used my ABH Amrezy palette. First off, look at how pretty this is. This is like next level Mariah Carey type glam, honey. It is pink, it is gold, it is sparkly, and it is one of the larger palettes that they have in their collection. And to me, that alone already makes me wonder why I haven't used it. And then for you to get on the inside and see a color story like this, I am someone who is not the biggest fan of warm orange tone neutrals. Plain neutrals or cool tone neutrals, where they're gray or pink toned, I believe are absolutely beautiful. So to know that this not only has neutrals, but it has a matte black and it has glitters in it, it's like, Torrence, why haven't you used this? Especially considering the fact that I sent this to a giveaway winner. That was the fastest time for me to use it, to go ahead and give them inspiration for it. But every time I look at my ABH collection and I think, let's do a neutral palette, my mind either goes to my Soft Glam palette or my Sultry palette from them. And so I just never quite got into this one. But recently I've been watching people post their best of 2020 collections, and it seems like many people have this and think it's one of their favorites. So I promised myself in 2021 I'm going to be using this palette, especially considering the fact that right now it is still available. So I want to hurry up and get a tutorial up on this palette before they discontinue it, because it is limited edition. Next up on the list at number 8, unfortunately, is another item that's been discontinued. When the brand first put it out, they said it was going to be limited edition, but it stayed around for so many years, many people just truly did not believe them. I'm not sure if it just didn't sell quite as well, and so they had to extend the selling period. And I could understand why many people didn't grab it, because when this product did launch, it did have a retail value of $50, and many people just did not like the layout of the palette. So for the price, they just did not see it being worth it. And that palette is the Dose of Colors Hidden Treasure palette. I am someone who absolutely loved the Dose of Color formula, and because I've never received a bad palette from them, although I didn't grab this when it first launched, I eventually did pick it up. And to me, the color story is absolutely beautiful. If you were to just go ahead and look at the colors for what they are, you can't deny this is a beautiful neutral palette. The problem is, and I'm quite sure you've already looked at it by now and seen, these pieces are laid out all over the place. And 9 times out of 10, that was part of the reason why this palette costs so much. When things are laid out in uniform, they tend to be a little bit cheaper because most products have to be machine cut and made. So if you come to a manufacturer with a layout like this, they're not going to have something like this on hand. So they're going to have to create a custom mold for you to use on just this particular palette, which means you're going to end up having to pay more to produce this product, which means the customer is going to end up paying more to get the product. And so, considering the fact no other palette on the market, I believe, has this layout, you can imagine why this was probably $50. Chances are for a 10-pan palette, if they would have lined them up smaller, most of their other palettes only about the $35, $40 range. So that's why most people just could not get this. They did not want their eyes jumping all over the place, and so it just didn't sell as much as their other palettes. Many people just even refused to purchase it on the half off sale. Honestly, I wish more people would have picked this palette up, because if the formula is as beautiful as their other palettes, this is truly going to be a gem. But this is something I just never quite got around to using, because I really enjoyed their single 5-pan all matte palettes. And so I never got a chance to use this one, because the only other palettes that I used that have a matte and shimmer formula were the Friendication palettes, as well as the Smoky Soiree and the Cutting Edge palettes. I never got a chance to use this one, but every time I see it, I just think this looks like this will be a perfect everyday neutral palette. And so for 2021, I'm going to make sure this is one of the palettes I use. And because I always get good feedback from Dose of Colors, more than likely I'll use this one on camera. But I really wish I could use this and recommend it for other people to pick up, but unfortunately it has been discontinued. Next up on the list at number 9 is a palette that retails for $58, and I'm glad to know that this palette is still available, even though they said this would be a limited edition product. If you know me, you know my absolute favorite eyeshadow color is green, so the fact that this brand put out a green eyeshadow palette and they make my favorite palettes on the market, I had to get it. The problem is, once it launched, there was nothing but bad reviews going around on the market. And so I decided, you know what, Torrence, why take the risk with it when you can put it to the side and test it out on another day? And unfortunately, that kept happening month after month after month. So at number 9, we have the Mel Cosmetics 420 palette. I'm not sure if you can see it, but the color does shift as you move the packaging. And I find that absolutely beautiful, especially considering the fact that they put that all the way around. It does it on the front, the back, as well as the sides here. So no matter what angle you look at it from, you're gonna get a show. But once you get inside, this is what truly grabbed my heart. The fact that not only do we have green shades, but we also have complementary colors that aren't your boring neutrals. This looks like a vivid neon palette. And although I am someone who loves neutrals, I do not like just basic orange shades. And although there are some warm shades here, they're more grungy type shades and not just your basic orange neutral. So that is what grabbed my heart. And I'm someone who's always looking for a more perfect matte yellow. And although, like I said, many people have been claiming that they have not had good luck with this palette, I am someone who many times can find very good looks out of products that did not do very well with the public. I feel good working with eyeshadows as well as pigments. And chances are, if this is a pigment palette, I should still have good luck with it. And just staring at it now, it has me wondering, Torrence, how have you not played with this green dream? And it's easy. Anytime I go for Mel Cosmetics and I'm going for green, I'm either going to go for my OG, the Gemini palette, which I think is one of the best on the market, or I'm going to go for the Smoke Sessions palette, which has a bunch of more greens in it. This palette is green, but it's not quite as green as those, and that may explain why I haven't used this yet. But during 2021, I promise you all, this palette will be used before December gets here. Coming in at number 10 is a palette to me that really just made me step back from the brand and go, wait a minute, sis. Y'all really gonna keep doing this? And I'm not gonna lie. The main reason I have not used this palette is simply because I was bitter over the fact that they've raised the prices and switched the packaging. This palette retails for $67, and although the color story is absolutely beautiful and I've heard nothing but good things about the formula, I'm just pissed that at one point in time their palettes were going for $65 and was coming in cardboard packaging, but now they're in plastic, and that would be the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. This palette, as you can see, has a nice packaging. Like, look at that. The way it catches the light, the way the different colors shift on here, it's absolutely beautiful. And then when you get on the inside, you can already tell the different colors and the different textures that are going on. Although you may look at this palette and think to yourself, but I can't wear this on an everyday basis, I promise you, there are plenty of neutral shades mixed in here so that you can wear this on an everyday basis. But I promise you, if you're someone like me who likes colors, who likes textures, who likes dual chrome shadows, you're absolutely gonna love this palette. I personally have not used it, but I've sat back and I've watched other people use it. I've seen the looks that you can achieve with this palette, and I'm quite sure if the formula is anything like Huda's other palettes, it's going to be absolutely amazing. But once again, I was just so bitter that she switched from cardboard packaging and raised the price $2, that every time I looked at this palette, I would just look at it, get a bad vibe, and then once I'm in a bad mood, I don't want to play with that makeup. I just want to go ahead and do something else. But I decided we're going to go ahead and get past that. And we're going to use this palette in 2021 because the color story is too beautiful and this palette is way too expensive for it to just be sitting on the shelf just because I was in a bad mood. For palette number 11, we've stepped out of high-end and stepped into the luxury zone because at $88 for an eyeshadow quad, we have truly stepped into the luxury price zone. And that palette for me would be the Tom Ford Honeymoon Quad. As I stated before, this is $88. And for 4 shadows, baby, that's $22 per shade. But when I tell you, this is one of Tom Ford's most best-selling palettes. It has been a cult classic since it released. And although I've had mine, I can honestly tell you, the #1 reason why I've never used this palette is simply because I didn't want to mess up the TF logo that is on each shadow. I know that is terrible. I promise you, I understand. I have several other Tom Ford shadows where I've gone ahead and said, screw that, we getting through it, we using it. But this was the first eyeshadow palette I bought from him where it had that embossing on all 4 shadows. Normally I only get it on 2, so I didn't feel so bad because the other 2 didn't have it. But because this is on all 4, I just could never bring myself to do it. But I already know, this is one of the palettes that I know for sure I'm going to use this year. And I really want to make sure I use this palette on camera because now that I do swatches with all of my palettes, it's going to ensure that I swatch all 4 shades to help get rid of that embossing and go ahead and use this palette because everyone I know who has this palette absolutely love it. And there's no reason to have a palette that costs you almost $90 and have absolutely no experience with it. So by the end of 2021, I promise you all I'm going to be using this palette. And to make sure I take that a step further, I promise you all I'm going to do a tutorial with this palette on this channel this year. Next up for number 12, we have last but certainly not least because it is the most expensive palette on the list. This palette retails for $125. And although I loved every palette I've purchased from this particular line in the brand, I can honestly say I've never used this palette simply because when it launched, it just wasn't a good time in my life. I was going through some very stressful things, and the very last thing I was worried about was some makeup, honey. I wasn't worried about doing no makeup. I honestly wasn't really worried about my skincare, but the palette was beautiful, but it wasn't one of the palettes that got the hype of the other color stories from the same line. And although it was the one that I felt as if I liked the most and looked the most beautiful, everyone else didn't feel the same way. So when no one else was talking about it, it didn't give me the urge to go ahead and push it either. And that palette for me would be the McGrath Labs Mothership 6 Midnight Sun palette. This here is a 10-pan palette. It features my absolute favorite shimmer formula, which is from McGrath Labs. And these palettes, as I stated before, retail for $125. And although I've never actually used this palette, I have swatched it, I believe, on 1 or 2 occasions, but all shadows have not even been swatched. Just looking at the palette right here, I've never touched this purple shade, and it doesn't look like I've used this brown shade here either. I know I did swatch this color here because I was trying to see if I wanted to use this one or the one from the Mothership 5, and I do believe eventually I used the one from Mothership 5, but I just wanted to see how similar this particular color was to that other one, but I never actually got the chance to use this one, and it just blows my mind that I've spent $125 on my favorite formula and still have no idea what it looks like on the eye. So if nothing else, this is the one palette out of every palette on this list that I feel as if I really need to use, simply because if I never get the chance to, it was the most money wasted. And I've sat down and I just thought about it, and I was like, Torrence, considering the fact you know that there are exactly 12 palettes and you know exactly how much each palette is, I wonder how much money is that total. And after doing the math, considering the fact we're just going to say that nothing was purchased on a discount and everything came with free shipping, even though some things may not have. With Michigan sales tax, which is currently 6%, in order to purchase all 12 of these items and pay sales tax, I would have to come out of $705.96. $705 worth of makeup that I've had for at least 2020, if not before then, and I've never used it. That's unacceptable, honey. We have way too many goodies in my collection, and although I am truly headed out to run errands because 1, I need to run to the grocery store, 2, I need to check my P.O. box because many times I order things and sometimes they may be on pre-order and they may get sent out early, so I may have something there. So I want to make sure I go ahead and do all of that, and I'm going to make sure I take all of these items and set these right here in front of me on the file cabinet. I have a file cabinet that I keep across the room from me, and I always keep the makeup on top of there that reminds me these are the things you want to use for the week. And although it may be impossible for me to use all 12 of these items within the next week, by keeping them right there out in the open in eyesight, it'll constantly be a reminder for me that I only have the rest of the year to not only do the things that I want to do on my channel, but to also use these items that I promised myself I would use and also promised you all I would use. So I want you all to make sure you keep me accountable and let me know if for any reason there is one particular palette you would like to see before another. Just leave me a comment down below and I can make sure I make that happen, because I'm excited to use all 12 of them. But if there's one you all would like to see before something else, I don't mind going ahead and making that happen for you all. But I hope you all truly did enjoy this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you already have, I would like to say thank you. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my future uploads. And also, leave me a comment down below if there's anything in your collection that you purchased with the genuine intent to actually use it, but never quite got around to it. Because considering the fact we're all wearing masks everywhere we go, a lot of items we just don't feel like taking the time to do, especially when we think of the time it takes to do our full glam beat face, only to take and put a mask across it and have that stripe right there. It's like, nah sis, now you coming from a beat and now I got to come for you. But we got to do what's best for our health and for others. And so many times we just can't get through everything. But I want to make sure I go ahead, run errands, get back home, edit this video, and also have just a little bit of time to myself to relax for the end of the day. With today being a Sunday, although this video may not get up to you all till Saturday, I am someone who generally loves to read, I love to take a nap, and I love to light a candle every Sunday. If I can't do anything else, I like to get those all in. And so I may not have much time to do all of those, but we're really going to try to get as much time in as possible. But with nothing else, I hope you all remember to practice, continue to stay blessed, and until next time, goodbye YouTube.